under your chairmanship. Can I give my sincere congratulations to my honourable friend for the Vale of Glamorgan. We know that he's a compassionate Conservative, and I think that he's demonstrated that today. But I was astonished by the level of expertise he displayed, and I learned a lot from his debate today. Now, as a candidate before I was elected, and now as MP, I've been very pleased to speak with local Harlow parents whose children have special needs. And in particular, I'm a supporter of Harlow Pact, which is Parents of Autistic Children Together. And I have often met with their chair, Sam Fansett, and Vice Chair Wendy Merry and others. And in fact, they're very IT friendly, and we usually speak via BlackBerry Messenger. On their behalf, I'd like to raise some problems that are sometimes seen as the little things, but actually make a big difference. Firstly, the parents feel it would help if more special schools could specialise, for example, in autism therapy, rather than just being an alternative to mainstream schools when they can no longer cope. If this is impossible, then more mainstream schools could develop specialised autism units on site or share a unit between a few schools. At present, I understand that if a parent chooses a school more suited to their child's needs outside their catchment area, they have to provide their own transport and sign a disclaimer to say they will never request transport in the future. Now, we all know that there are limited funds, but there shouldn't be a postcode lottery for this sort of thing. And as the free school reforms come through, I would urge the government to look at home-to-school transport and also the access to expert special education. Secondly, why is it that children on the autistic spectrum, especially those with severe difficulties, are unable to get a blue badge to park their car? Parents of such children struggle on a daily basis in sometimes extremely difficult situations. As they have told me, parking a car when a child is having a meltdown can be highly dangerous. Yeah. Now, I know at the moment we're looking to crack down on those people who abuse blue badges, but again I would ask the Minister to do what she can to nudge local authorities into making blue badges more available to those who have autistic or children with significant special needs. And in addition, it's worth taking action, much stronger action, on those who actually park in disabled bays, who shouldn't, because that again causes incredible difficulties for those with severe disabilities. Thirdly, on the issue of special educational needs, there's a question around arbitrary limits. A constituent of mine, Jackie Stedman, has suffered a constant battle to get a good education for her two children. Again and again, she's run up against problems due to random limits on financial support, which are tied to age rather than need, or to the potential of children to learn. As I said, of course I accept the overall need to cut the deficit and be careful with our finances, but the sums involved are not significant in the context of the overall budgets, and in this case, the budgets of Essex County Council. Now, the context is that Essex Council pay for home-to-school transport for Jackie's two children, who both travel in the same car to the same school. But the council are now saying that, according to the rules, they can pay for one child and not the other, and even though the car will have to make the journey anyway. I mean, the absurdity of this is quite extraordinary. This is unaffordable for the family, and it feels like that little Britain, the computer says no, just because one of her children is now 16 years old. Now, I understand the need for local government to set criteria, but the rules are arbitrary and can often hurt decent families who just want a good education for their children. And the same kind of problem is seen in whether therapies are offered by the local PCT. Sam Fansett, who I mentioned earlier, gives the example that not all children can be offered the sensory integration therapy or the auditory integration therapy, and it depends on which PCT they live in. which PCT area, and even though that these therapies are known to transform the children's lives and drastically improve behaviour at an early age. And she also queries why speech therapy seems to end at the end of year 7. Again, this seems to be a slightly arbitrary limit, which does not relate to the need or the child's potential. Finally, one of the potential casualties of the difficult economy was going to be a Thursday evening session of respite care in a Harlow community centre called Sam's Place. Thankfully, the council worked hard to rescue this, and I congratulate the leader of Harlow Council, Andrew Johnson, Councillor Joel Charles, and council officers for their hard work in achieving a solution. But one of the lessons that came out of this, for me, is that yes, most parents are happy to take on the responsibility of running services for their children, but we can't ask them to take on legal liabilities and compliance duties and other red tape, and parents with special needs have enough to worry about to do all that. Now, I know that the government is looking at these things, but in the context of the big society reviews, I would be grateful if this issue could be seriously considered. Now, as I've suggested, Mr. Brady, the solution must involve the big society. At the moment, if you have an autistic child, talking to the local education authority or PCT can be like trying to get through to a mobile phone company. Press 1, press 2, and so on. And what parents need is a much more personal service. And perhaps with the response that, it's cost a lot of money, but with all the reductions in appeals and complaints that would occur, that might actually save money in the long run. Essex Council have been moving towards this, but the results are quite patchy. And I would urge them to use their back office savings to hire more dedicated, proper relationship managers, human beings who would understand these issues and would liaise directly with the families, such as those involved in Harlow Pact. And as I said, the other problem is that it always seems to be the computer says no. Why should the computer say no to parents struggling against the odds? Decisions are arbitrary or tied to arbitrary age limits and catchment areas, which are largely random or created for bureaucratic convenience.
Will the Honourable Member keep going?
Please.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member, and I think the Honourable Member is making some extremely important points with these arbitrary limits, because the legislation, from my understanding, does not provide for such arbitrary limits. It needs to provide for the child, but it's a system that local authorities already use in order to prevent a child from gaining access. But should a parent want to battle through the maze of the statementing process very often, they can actually win through the end. But bearing in mind the delays that I've already talked about, very few parents sadly have the resources or capacity to do that.
My honourable friend is exactly right, and my point is that given what parents have to face and the difficulties they face with special needs children, why should they have to battle?
Absolutely.
I mean, the lady I spoke about, Mrs. Jackie Stedman, has spent years battling with the courts and relevant authorities to try and get the proper treatment for her children. Often she's been successful. Why should she have to go through that in the first place? To borrow a phrase, our public services need to speak human, and that means looking at each case on its individual merits and talking to the parents and children involved. Please.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for giving way, and perhaps I should have declared an interest earlier as a former teacher and still a member of the NASUWT. And I just want to ask the Honourable Member if he agrees that actually schools find themselves in the middle of this conundrum as well. And one of the great frustrations of many teachers is having made a diagnosis, having seen there's a problem, having found that children arrived in school on the autistic spectrum or suffering from dyslexia, can see the problem. There's frustration there of having the resources and that kind of support that parents quite right demand is lacking for teachers as well. They want to get on with the job, they see the problem, they've identified the problem, they know the direction of travel, but often LEAs are lacking them.
Again, my honourable friend is right, and what really should happen is if the teacher, who is so well placed to understand the problem and diagnose it, then that problem should be sorted out from there. But then what happens is they have to then wade through the relentless bureaucracy, and it doesn't matter what local authority it is, it's rules rule this and regulation that, and that is what makes lives difficult. So just to end, Mr Brady,